Democratic Congressman Krishnamorthi of Illinois. Part of his district includes the 41st Ward of Chicago and the city's west and northwest suburbs. Congressman, thank you so much for sharing part of your afternoon with us. So with the administration taking over D.C. police and deploying the National Guard, you've argued that this is a distraction. I want to present what residents of Washington, D.C. told the Washington Post in spring. About half of the district's residents that were polled say they believe crime is an extremely or very serious problem. If residents don't feel safe, is that not a reason to intervene?
Well, I think that law enforcement should do everything in its power to address people's concerns about their safety, no doubt. However, let's just be clear about what's going on right now. You know, President Trump appears to be trying to distract attention away from his mismanagement of the economy, as well as focus on the Epstein trials with regard to this particular issue. And if he were to try to deploy troops on American soil against American citizens, for instance, in Chicago or elsewhere, it would be blatantly unconstitutional and deeply dangerous. It's absolutely outrageous that he would even consider that.
The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about that this afternoon. She said that the president was describing what he would like to see. She says that cleaning up crime in the United States starts with cleaning up the nation's capital. I'm sort of paraphrasing what she said. She said that once we get to other cities, effectively, they would cross whatever legal threshold would be in the way to clean up crime. How would you respond to the president's threat to send the military into Chicago to clean up crime? Do you think that would make residents and your constituents feel safer?
No, it would not. It would actually, it would be provocative, and it would be blatantly unconstitutional. It would be a violation of posse comitatus, the use of federal troops for domestic law enforcement. I actually have a bill, a piece of legislation to prevent an American president from deploying American troops on American soil against American citizens without consent of local executives or officials. And I think that, again, we should remember why he's doing this. He's trying to change the subject, change the conversation, but it's deeply dangerous and it's wrong.
The question of deploying the National Guard in Southern California after protests in June is now the subject of a lawsuit filed by California Governor Gavin Newsom. He's challenging Trump's authority to call in the National Guard against his wishes. Trump allies that I've spoken to are very bullish on this case. They say that even though this judge appears ready, who's overseeing this case, appears ready to back Newsom's legal argument, they believe that an appeals court will side with the president and his ability to send in military forces or national forces into states. Is there anything from state leaders or Congress that would stop him from deploying the military to other U.S. cities if the courts side with him in this California case?
Well, I think that we would be able to still formulate legislation to prevent him from being able to do this. That's the type of legislation that I just introduced. But again, I think that he is trying to provoke kind of the outrage of the day in making these pronouncements. And again, for my constituents who feel the pinch of the economy, who feel the pinch of the blanket tariff chaos that's rocking businesses and leading to layoffs in our area, they can see through what's happening. And again, they don't want any part of this nonsense with regard to federalizing the National Guard in other places.
Congressman, I have two more questions for you. One on something that you mentioned in relation to tariffs. Conversations with China, specifically on a trade deal, have been extended so that tariffs do not kick in immediately. I want to ask you about NVIDIA and AMD announcing that they're going to pay some 15% of their China revenues directly to the U.S. government in exchange for export licenses for some of these older model H20 AI chips. Trump has made the argument that China already has access to a version of these chips. You've argued in interviews that I've watched that the president is putting U.S. national security up for sale. You don't see any benefit to this deal and to the U.S. potentially having control over, or at least purview over, the kinds of chips that China has access to? Because I guess the counter argument would be that if China doesn't have access through a deal like this, they would try to manufacture their own chips, and that could prove consequential to national defense as well.
They're already doing that. That's the thing. They're already trying to replace our chips with their own. The problem is they don't have the ability to achieve the types of performance levels achieved by our top performance chips. Look, we should not ever put our national security up for sale. And what we're doing right here is basically handing to the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, our highest end semiconductor chips, which are then going to be used to train their artificial intelligence models in their military modernization, as well as in the perpetration of human rights abuses against Uyghurs and others. And so this is a complete dereliction of duty, what the president is doing right now. I'm going to introduce legislation to require congressional approval for the sale of these types of chips to the CCP and adversaries. The other thing your audience should know is that he's not only talking about these H20 chips, he's also talking about the Blackwell series of chips, which are the highest end chips made by NVIDIA. And so I just asked the question, what's next? Is he going to sell aircraft carriers to them for a 15% tip? Is he going to sell our nuclear-powered submarines? I mean, this is completely outrageous.
Now, the president says he would anticipate those higher-end chips being part of a future negotiation. Lastly, Congressman, only because you mentioned the Epstein files, on that discharge petition from your colleagues, Congressman Massey and Khanna, it would force a vote to compel the administration to release the Epstein files. It needs a majority. Would it have your backing?
100%. And I think it would have the backing of the majority of Republicans that vote on it as well. And it will have all Democrats. Look, I think that this is something that he is desperately trying to change the subject from. He does not want those files to be released for some reason. And on top of that, it's now bringing legislative business to a standstill on Capitol Hill. We are about to go back in September to try to fund the government before the September 30th deadline. And I'm concerned that this particular issue is going to prevent the Republican majority from moving on any business, including funding the government.
Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, we appreciate the time and perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Still to come.